and the recording starts now. There is a disclosure. So if you got it, say you got it. We'll be recording this Zoom. And today's agenda, just a welcome one more time. We did our poll on how are you arriving. We'll be creating community with one another, having a great discussion with Rocky, and then an open question and answer for anyone on the call, and then we'll wrap up and close. And with that, let's go ahead and kick this off with Atimel and Kuya Chaz.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are today. Can you hear me okay, Elaine?
Yes.
Thumbs up?
Yes.
All righty. Thank you all so much for joining. And if it wanted to start with a quick quote. If it weren't for the American soldiers, we wouldn't be here today. That is something I heard from my mom growing up, and she also tells my daughters, her granddaughters, that as well. My name is Melissa Cameron, Ate Mal to many of you, and I serve as the Vice President for FACES Midwest. FACES is just one of many employee groups and employee networks of AT&T, and AT&T employee group members and retirees are helping promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in our communities and at AT&T, and we're also helping make an impact in our communities through culture, volunteerism, and the projects that we promote. So thank you to all of you for your support. I'm also a member of the AT&T Veterans Employee Group and the daughter of a World War II survivor who's the oldest of 12 kids. My grandfather served as a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army in World War II in the Philippines, and he was also a Philippine scout, and then had served under the command of Colonel Ramsey in the Philippines during the time of Colonel Ramsey in the Philippines, and you're going to hear a little bit about the last cavalry charge as well during this call. Years ago, I read the book Never Surrender by Colonel Edwin P. Ramsey, and he graciously offered to sign several copies of my book for me and my family. So the book has been a lasting impression on my heart because it's part of our family history. I had reached out through Colonel Ramsey's website this year to ask for a speaker for today, and you can imagine my surprise and delight when Rocky herself answered that call. And we are so thankful that you did, Rocky, and so excited to hear from you today. You'll be hearing a little bit more later, too, about how you can support the Philippine Scouts and join us in support in preserving this important history. And I hope that all of you will take something from this conversation today and learn more about how you can preserve the important stories of your own family histories and how important those stories are for keeping them alive throughout your generation. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Chaz Palasak of the AT&T Veterans.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Mel. And so magandang hapon or magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. I'm Chaz Palasak, and I'm really glad to be here, not just representing me being Filipino, but also having served in the Marine Corps. And AT&T Veterans, as you all know, we are here to support not just our military, but our veterans and their families as well. And for me, being here today really just represents a lot. Because Filipinos have always had a long history in serving in the U.S. military. And it's as early as 1901, when President McKinley signed an executive order allowing Filipinos to serve. Now, most of us served in the U.S. Navy at the time, and many worked in ships or different gunboats throughout the Philippines. And when the U.S. entered World War II, they were allowed to begin serving in the U.S. Army as well. And World War II, as you all know, right, is a very important part of our history. My grandfather, his name is Mariano, he's 94 years old, still lives in the Philippines. Growing up, he told me about a story about him helping guerrillas. And what they would do was that they would scout for movement of Japanese forces and essentially keeping a low profile during that time. And then I also have a grand uncle. His name's Uncle Peping, and he died at one of the camps after the Death March. So for me, right, it's a long-standing history of Filipinos in my family serving. And I when I heard about this opportunity to be able to speak and hear Colonel Ramsey's story, it's just amazing, right? And I'm just thankful for being here, being able to represent veterans, AT&T veterans and bases as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Ate Elaine and Dr. Ramsey.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you so much for giving us such a great history lesson, Chaz. If you didn't see it in the chat, attendees, please drop your name, where you're calling from, and what you're hoping to get out of today's event. Some of you already talked about wanting to know more about history, wanting to know more about World War II, and getting back in touch with community. And I think with our two opening speakers right now, between Atimel and Kuya Chaz, we've done that. We've been able to offer up something that is really special to all of us. I mean, even just hearing the lilt in Tagalog, if that doesn't warm your heart, I mean, I'm prepared. I got my tissues, y'all. I got my tissues. I'm prepared because it's about to get emotional. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. It is Filipino Friday. I've tagged it. It's done. We are down. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our discussion with Dr. Raquel Ramsey, Rocky, and really dig into more about the movie, the experience, and get to know an incredible woman who is part of an incredible moment in history with her incredible husband. And that is the legacy she is carrying on today. So if you don't have Dr. Raquel Ramsey pinned on your Zoom, feel free to do it. It's time. So Rocky, thank you so much for being here today. It is such a pleasure to be talking to you. And I think the first question that all of us is curious about is, how did you and your husband meet?
That is always the first question I get in any open forum. Whether it is of any organization, that is the first question. How did you meet Ed? Well, to me, it was kismet, because I guess God planned it to be that way. First of all, this guy survived the war, and he came into my life. And it was New Year's Eve, and I met him at New Year's Eve at the U.S. Embassy. He was the guest of honor, and I was there because of the Spanish consulate and embassy, because we were very involved with Casino Español. And I was in all the organizations of Hispanidad. I was the MC for Miss Hispanidad. I was on the board of the Miss Hispano-America festivities, and I hosted the King of Spain at the University of Santo Tomas, where I was going to school. And we welcomed him, and of course, the Spanish Armada. So everybody was just so excited about meeting the King of Spain and meeting the Spanish Armada. And everybody was matching me with the captain of the Spanish Armada, because everybody was sure that I was going to marry a Spaniard, because that was the community that I was hanging out with. But God had another plan for me. This man comes into my life, Ed Ramsey, and we are 29 years difference. I was 32 and he was 61. But when I met him, he just looked like Dapper Dan, the confidence man. Unbelievable. Love at first sight to me. And the feeling was mutual for him. So that he asked my number and he called me every single night at 10 o'clock in the evening. We were going to have our dinner and he's going to sleep. So I changed very rapidly from the system of late dinners, which was a Spanish style, to American style early dinners. So that is the background of meeting Ed. He changed my life completely. And we have had 34 incredible years together.
Wow.
Thank you, Lord.
Amen. And give it up to the universe for bringing you two together, even those who wanted to matchmake you to somebody else. Like, it happened, right?
It happened. Yeah, it was fate. Absolutely.
So we all know, and if you watch the documentary, you could really see the how and the why Colonel Ramsey was a well-respected leader. And Rocky, what about his leadership skills do you remember most? And do you see similar leadership attributes in your children and grandchildren?
Oh, absolutely. He was admired. That's Ed. He was respected and he was loved. And I think he was saved by the love of the Filipino people. And he said that when his book, Lieutenant Ramsey's War, was actually launched at the Philippine Consulate in Los Angeles, the same date that was Desert Storm, January 16. Of course, a different year, but everybody alluded to that. And it was love that saved him and kept him alive. So that understanding of the Filipino people, he was more a Filipino than many Filipinos. He just loved the Filipino people. And so this became part of our family, was the Philippines, And in terms of the family, I have an incredible son, Doug Ramsey. You talk about survivor. Ed was a survivor. So is my son, Doug Ramsey, who calls me every night. And that's what makes him so special. And he is undergoing hemodialysis. And he drives himself to have the hemodialysis. And he has survived. He is a survivor. And he is kept by God to be with me. Because I said to Ed, don't take your son. He's all I've got. So, and that's exactly what the fact is. Doug is in my life every day. And so is Ed, because his orchids just bloomed. And I call him Winky Winky, because the orchids come back after 2 or 3 years. And everybody says, Rocky, you have a green thumb. No, that's Ed. That's Winky Winky. That makes that happen. Oh my God. So I am so blessed, and I'm so blessed with a wonderful family, the Ramsey family and the Ramirez family, which is my brother in Canada, but I lost him last year. So I lost Ed 9 years ago, and I lost my brother last year. So I'm sure a number of people have felt losses, and it's tough to try to continue with life. But I have an incredible doctor, Dr. Mel Levy, and his wife, Paula Levy, and he takes such great care of me. In fact, this weekend, they're picking me up to go and have lunch together at the Lux Sunset. He checks on me every week, and his wife brings me the best desserts because she's a baker par excellence, and she sends me soup. And so, I have a family that are the Levy family now. So I have the Ramseys, the Ramirez, well, from Canada, and the Levys. God provides. When you feel that you are lost, you are never lost if you have faith, because he will be there at your side.
I'm just writing that down. You are never lost if you have faith. That's beautiful. So you spoke about Colonel Ramsey's love for the Filipino, for the Filipino people. And I'm wondering, what was the communication style? Like, how do you build trust with people who are not speaking your native language or vice versa? Like, what did Ed do to do that?
Well, he spoke a little Tagalog. He would say,
all right,
marunong akong magsalita sa Tagalog. He was better than me. And so he was communicating with the negritos in the jungle, and they wear their thongs. And in the darkness of the night, he would follow them wherever they would go, because they could see in the dark. He can't. But that's how he survived. The negritos in the mountains, and his communication skills, though poor, were all by action, by emotion, by showing he cares, because they cared for him incredibly. And I want to tell you the biggest part about going through book signings of Lieutenant Ramsey's War was seeing people saying to him, hugging him and saying, "Thank you, sir, for saving our country and our lives." I mean, it was just so cheerful. And to me, that was the most beautiful moments when we would do book signings of his book, which sold 339,000 copies. So you have a treasure, Melissa, because that book to be autographed by Ed, there is no more Ed. And therefore, to have a book like that meant so much. And everybody that has come around and said, "I have a book autographed by your husband," they are so excited. And to me, that's what I feel. I feel what those people felt about Ed. I know him from the people around him, from the people in my family, and from the people that are getting to know him in all of the gatherings that we had. And we had 34 incredible years together. And that's how I became a military wife, because I was there every step of the way.
And let me ask you about that. As a military spouse, moving and going to different places and stuff, how was that for you? What was that experience like?
Well,
for
I
you?
did not actually have to move except from the United States to the Philippines, because
Okay.
remember that the war, I was born in 1946. So actually, I was not a war person. I mean, I was not alive during the war. I was a baby in the Angels, And so, but I captured all of his life through his book and through knowing him. So even if I was not alive at that time, and I always tease Alice Benitez, who was interviewed in Never Surrender, and she met him when she was 12 years old, and she called him Errol Flynn. And I said, "No, he is Robert Taylor to me," from his picture. And he said, "No, Errol Flynn, Tyrone Power." And they kept him in Pangasinan as he was recruiting guerrillas. Her father was a judge. And so I say to her, "You were lucky. You met Ed before I met him, because I didn't meet him till 1979. And you were 12 years old." And she said she wanted to tell her classmates about Ed. And her father said, "If you did that, he will be dead the next day." But I want to tell you about the Filipinos. Not a single Filipino betrayed Ed. That's loyalty. That's love. And the Japanese put $250,000 on his head. Can you imagine what that value of that money was in those days? And nobody betrayed him. That is true love. That is loyalty, and that is patriotism. So whenever I speak to any Filipino, and I am a Filipino because I was born in the Philippines. So to me, that is what makes Filipinos so special. You are the best that I know in the world. And you kept my husband alive to come to me so that I could have my life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Woo. Y'all, you got to use the Zoom reactions and throw up some hearts for Rocky. My goodness. Woo.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Michelle Rose. She says, "Love you, Rocky. Love you too."
Yeah, it's just it's an incredible moment when you just really recognize all of the events that take place for something to take place.
Exactly.
And everything after. Like here you are carrying on this incredible legacy of the family as you continue to talk about their contribution into this world. And you're making a contribution into this world by just being present, staying healthy. Give it up to Dr. Levy for taking care of you and bringing you that soup. because there's more work to be done, right? There's more work to be done to share these stories.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering, what aspects of Filipino culture or tradition did you integrate, or Colonel Ramsey integrate into life after his tour and relationship in the Philippines, and as you moved around?
Barrio Fiesta. I want you to know that there are 3 plazas named after Ed in the Philippines. Okay. So he would be honored when he came back in 1964 with his family. And Doug was a child, a kid. And they would honor him in every community. And they would have a Barrio Fiesta. And there is the adobo. And there is the pancit. And there is the rituals that make the Filipino gathering so special. Halo halo. My goodness. And the favorite dessert of Ed, which I had at Arlington when he was buried in Arlington 9 years ago, we had for the dinner, well, it was actually luncheon, leche flan. He loved leche flan. I love leche flan too. So we had that for the special luncheon. There were 250 people there. And after that incredible ceremony at Arlington, then we came back to the Sheraton, and then I saw a rainbow. And I broke down and I said, yes, honey, I know you are with me. Because a rainbow was a symbol when we would go to the Halekoa Hotel. Every anniversary, we did 22 anniversaries at the Halekoa Hotel in Hawaii, in Oahu. Our anniversary is December 22. So we would spend the whole Christmas there, and we would see the Hawaiian Hilton, and it has the rainbows. And we would see from our balcony of the Halekoa the rainbow. So on that day, where I was so emotional, in tears, after they handed me the flag. This is now Lieutenant General Mike Bills, who gave me the flag. So we all proceeded to the hotel for the luncheon. And I anchored the whole, and I was still in one piece, not breaking down. And after that whole luncheon, and everybody enjoyed the lechon, not that the lechon, the leche flan, as a dessert, I went to the window and I saw the rainbow right coming into Arlington, because that was my window. And I broke down. I said, Ed is with me. Because I want to tell you, I will allude to this. Ed said goodbye to me on March 7 at 3:00 in the morning. I had no idea. He was always so loving, so caring when you talk about his character. He was the most generous, loving, and caring man. But he was always saying, I love you, I adore you. And I said, honey, don't say adore. That's for God, not for me. Okay? No, he said, I adore you. And so on that March 7 at 3 in the morning, he held my hand and he pointed to our wedding photo. And he said, you and me, meaning to say we will be together. And I said, yes, honey. I was going to Beverly Hills High School to teach that day. So I said, okay, go back to sleep. And that same morning, the housekeeper called and said he was not getting up. And that was his goodbye to me. My God, when I think about that, Ed knew that he wanted to say goodbye. But that shows to you the love that he carried all the time to the last minute of his life. And he said to me, when we would be joking around, he said to me, oh, you can fool around and I will send you darts, but you will be with me in Arlington. And I said, woman on top? And he said, yes. So that's how, if I do not remarry, which I don't plan to, I will be in Arlington when God calls me, woman on top. This is very emotional for me. That's my Ed in one lump sum.
Thank you for sharing. I think I won't look at a rainbow the same way or an orchid the same way after meeting you, and just really offering us the symbolism those
Mhm.
two things have in your life. And it certainly makes such an impression that, people do show up even when they're gone. They do show up in different ways,
Oh, yeah,
and it's a beautiful reminder that they are still with us.
of course. I mean, I feel him all around the house. When he gets up from the bed, I hear the sound of getting up. I smell his perfume, his lotion or whatever. I mean, he is around me all the time. And I think that he wanted to be with me through the legacy that he made me a whole new career, because I retired from Beverly Hills High School the same year that he passed away. That was 50 years in the profession. And he had told me to write his sister's book. But then Vanilla Fire came, Stephen Barber and Matthew Housley, and now we have Jay working with us on Taking Flight. Jay Miracle is the screenwriter, because the screenwriter Travers passed away when we were doing Never Surrender. And so I feel that God plans things for you. Many times you want certain things to go in certain ways, but he knows what's best for you. So to me, every crisis that I have had in the life of Ed, every time I would bring him to the emergency room where Colonel Ramsey, in the military hospital here at very close to me. And Colonel Ramsey, and I'm going, God will decide if he will take him or he will not take him. And he did not take him till he was 96 years old. So, and Dr. Levy took care of him for 20 years, and he has been taking care of me for 9 years now. So my life has been arranged the way I see it in God's will. And he will take me when he feels my mission is done. But my mission became Never Surrender, because Stephen Barber approached me and said, we just heard about Colonel Ramsey. We were filming in the Philippines. And where are you? He writes me. I said, I'm here in Los Angeles. Where? Santa Monica. He said, I live near Santa Monica. So he comes by, and that's how Never Surrender began. And so I was supposed to write his sister's book. I did not write it because I was involved with Never Surrender. And this was Ed's story. So Paula Levy always jokes and says to me, Rocky, he just wants you to always think of him. So he gave you a new career. I just completed 50 years in the profession. And now I am executive producer, historian, archivist, writer, author for Taking Flight. I would never have imagined that would be my route, where I would go. But God plans things for you. And this was also Ed's plan up there. I want to make sure Rocky's always thinking of me. And Never Surrender just opens again the door to talking about him all the time. And his website, my God, it is just unbelievable. If you open his website, you could spend hours looking at all the activities that he has done. That's my Ed.
So a couple of more questions,
Yes.
Rocky. What makes organizations like the Philippine Scouts unique and important in preserving the legacy of those who served with the U.S. Army's Philippine Scouts?
Well, I think that organizations like the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society, Ed was 26th Cavalry, but he was a Philippine Scout. And he said he was so proud to have the Filipinos working with him, fighting with him. defending the nation with him. He said they were the best soldiers ever. And so he's so proud when he says 26 Cavalry, PS, always, Philippine Scout. I am a Philippine Scout. And this organization, the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society, carries the legacy of all these men. And Ed was one of them. And so to me, Ed was cavalry, because that's where he was in terms of the leading the last horse mounted cavalry charge in U.S. Army history. But he was a Philippine Scout. And so the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society was an organization that Ed and I would attend every year, every reunion. And I would encourage all Filipinos to become members of the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society. We have an incredible group of people, leadership, and who love the Philippines and America. And that is what we have. It is so beautiful to see. And so I would say, when you look at organizations that you want to be involved with, we were involved in so many military organizations, but we were always focused on the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society and the U.S. Cavalry Association, because that's who Ed was. Now, he also came from the Oklahoma Military Academy. So the Oklahoma Military Academy brought Ed to what he became. So when I received his award for the Lieutenant General Potts Award, I said on stage, Ed would have been a juvenile delinquent were it not for the military academy, because he was given the guidance and he was given the view and the goal of being a true American soldier. And that's what made him survive, because he wanted to survive and win the war. You know, it is not just give up. Okay, everybody surrendered. He never surrendered. And I want to allude to that because those were the words he wrote in a letter, which made me cry all night when I opened that package. The title of Never Surrender, which was adopted by Vanilla Fire, came from a letter that Ed wrote to his mother and sister. And he said, it is either the war ends or I die fighting, because I will never surrender. And that became the title of the documentary.
So powerful.
Very, very powerful, but it came from him, because that was his letter to his mother. And the fact that they found the letter and he came back means to say he was alive.
So last question, until we open it up for everyone. You know, what steps would you recommend in starting to preserve our family histories and stories? Because for Filipinos and Filipino Americans, we don't show up in history books. It's not until we start doing more work in educating ourselves through various Filipino American or Filipino studies classes that's offered usually online, or specific universities that have professors schooled in that. But for ourselves, in trying to make sure that our histories, our family histories, are notated for the future, you know, what would you recommend that we do?
Okay, the first thing that you need to do is to do oral history. A lot of people do not realize that in all the museums, and I've spoken to a number of National World War II Museum, the National Museum of the Army, everything that is compiled and put together there came from the stories of the men. And that is because their relatives asked them to tell the story on a tape. So get a tape recorder and ask questions from your family. So begin with oral history of your family. Write it down. When you start writing down, you will begin to develop the story, and then write the book on your family. That's the family legacy. And then Join organizations like the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society, like FACES, that will be able to share as a community those stories. They're not just supposed to be staying inside a book or staying inside an envelope or a piece of paper. No, they have to be known. So whenever you have gatherings, presentations, and the Filipinos love to have, fiesta and siestas and all. I mean, when you have that, everybody tells their stories. And so like your mom, Melissa, tell her, start writing down what are the stories she has, because those are real. They are not written by journalists. The best stories are true stories from the mouth of the people who were there. And those people, unfortunately, are leaving us. So if they do not tell the story, we will not get the true story. So do that. Those are the methods of which you preserve and keep alive this Filipino American History Month. I think your organization, FACES, I congratulate you. You have done a great job in keeping the community together and making these discussions, which are interesting to everybody. And begin doing that today, not tomorrow, today. Saying, Mom, will you tell me what had happened during the war? And that is so precious, because you cannot get that from anybody else, but from that person who was there and from each person that she knew. So you kind of connect, and that brings me to ancestry. Ancestry is also very interesting. My son Doug loves ancestry. So he started going back to what the Ramseys were, descendants and everything. And the same he did for my Ramirez family. So to carry the pride and joy of your family, I am a Ramsey. I am a Ramirez. I am so proud to be a Filipino. I am so proud to be a member of the community. And I think that that is so important to everyone. In fact, Jackie Lingard, who is now listening to us here and saying amen, Jackie just asked me to do a video because her father was with Ed during the war, and they're opening his museum. So she said, give me a video of you talking about Dad. And of course, I said, well, I am not Ed, but Ed talked about her dad. And so these are the things that you carry on, because they're not here anymore. But for her, she's carrying the legacy of her father now in a museum, just like my Ed, who's there in the Oklahoma Military Academy Museum. Those museums, those oral histories will live long after you and I are gone. And the people will go, like at the Cavalry Museum in Reno, not Reno, California, and in Fort Reno, Oklahoma. When they visit the museum, they see Ed. They see the film, Never Surrender. They see his book. They see his uniform. So that is, if you have memorabilia of your family, donate it to a museum so that people will see, rather than keep it in the closet. No, bring it there so that people will see who these people are and where. It is so important to everyone.
Such great advice, Rocky, to give us some steps to care for our own family histories and add it to the collective. And really cool note on donating it to museums who are in alignment with those kinds of values in noting oral history and keeping people's memories alive there. So thank you to Atimel for chatting all good stuff in there. She's shared some websites, some way to support the Philippine Scouts. Just want to acknowledge everyone's chat here. Richard Gonzalez says, thank you, Rocky, for sharing your story and for Colonel Ramsey's service to our country and communities. Sincerely, Lieutenant Colonel USAF Rich Gonzalez, retired, and family. A lot of great comments from Michelle Rose. Jackie's live in the chat. A lot of amen, hands up. So with a few minutes left, I wanted to make sure that anyone who wanted to ask Rocky, Mel, or Chaz a question, just want to offer like 5 minutes for anyone who has a question. Feel free to unmute. Feel free to raise your hand, chat it in the chat. Just oh wow, Zoom can recognize when you raise your hand when you do this. If you didn't know that, y'all. But if you have a question, feel free to ask, because this is a precious time to get on one another's calendar.
Thank you to everyone. First of all, I want to tell you, I am so grateful for you to do this. Yes.
Ed, this is Elaine, this is Ramel. Ms. Ramsey, thank you for joining us. My family's from Pangasinan, so interesting to hear that. And, thank you for your husband's legacy as well. Can you share anything about, what he felt like when the Filipino World War II veterans were fighting for recognition in the United States after, being denied benefits, and then now being able to recognize that and with the Congressional Gold Medal? Had he talked to you about that at all, or how he felt, or how the struggle was in recognizing those that he fought with side by side?
Ramel, I want to tell you that you just opened a chord in my heart, because Ed and I appeared 3 times in Congress. Ed wanted to fight for his comrades. His comrades are the Filipino soldiers. So we appeared in all the cold weather of Washington, D.C. Ice cold, ice everywhere. They couldn't even open the gates of the plane because it was so cold. And there we are, and Ed would speak in Congress saying, I need you to keep your promise. The recession that they made, they receded from their promise. How can you do that to the Filipino soldiers? And he was able to fight to get their benefits. So I saw that every step of the way, Ed talking to all of this Congress people in the bodies. We went from each room of the Congress 3 times in 3 different years. Then, aside from that, I also saw him always talking to people. True, he began to become already versatile in the email. So Ed would answer all the letters from the Filipinos who would communicate with him and tell them. And then they wanted also recognition, because many of them had their papers and some were lost. So he fought through that, and they would send him all their documents to try to prove that they were there with him. Can you imagine at that time? This is wartime, and you're trying to find if this person was really there, but that was the route that Ed took every step of the way for all of the people that were with him. And he never gave up. And now I received the Congressional Gold Medal from the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society. Oscar Hillman, the general, gave it to me in San Antonio for Ed. So this was the culmination, the Congressional Gold Medal. Finally, we recognize the Filipino soldiers, the Filipino veterans.
So thank you on behalf of my grandfather, who was a Filipino World War II veteran, and in Bataan when he did the death march, they only saved him because he was a doctor. And so thank you for that, and for all the hard work that you all have done to recognize that. It's been a wonderful memory for our family.
Well, thank you. And you carry that legacy, Ramel. Absolutely. Thank you for your service of your family too. God bless you.
Great question, Ramel. And thank you for putting that question out there in our Zoom room. And so with 8 minutes till the top of the hour, just want to thank everyone for attending. And before you go, we've got some closing things we want to do. So I invite you to turn on your camera so I could take a virtual gallery snapshot of our time today. Don't be shy. It's all good. This is for Rocky. This is for your chapter. This is for Ed and his service. So if you can come off camera, I'd love to just take a few gallery views and snapshots. And for those of you who didn't change your name, because I see a lot of Paul Velasco's and a lot of Melissa Camerons, you can on your window in Zoom. There's 3 little dots. You can rename yourselves. I'd rename you, but I don't know you. I'm so sorry. I helped Rocky rename herself earlier, but I don't know everybody, so I don't want to go Zoom attendee 1, Zoom
Yeah.
attendee 2. But
Elaine,
yeah, please.
before you take the group picture, I just want to say thank you again to Rocky for joining us, and a special thank you to Elaine, who's an awesome moderator. We hope to do more of these. I know there's other films you want to do, but thank you so much, Elaine, for being such a fabulous moderator. I did put the link to support the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society in the chat. I think we've raised about $200 so far. So if you feel moved to make a donation, employees can use the Benevity link. Non-employees can visit the Philippine Heritage Scout Society. We invite you to join us in supporting that organization as well. And thank you all again for joining us today. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Rocky today.
All right. Thank you, Atimel. So I got a lot of great faces. Thank you for taking your camera on or off. And 1, 2, 3, iPad snap. Great thumbs up there. And I'm gonna do one more just in case you blink. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Well, let me just ask you, as your cameras are off and you're turning them now back off or staying on, what are you taking away from our conversation today? You can share it in the chat, you can come off mute. What are you taking away? What key learning? What didn't you know that you know now? And another question, how are you celebrating Filipino American History Month? I'd just really love to hear from you, what your impressions are of our time. And you don't need to be shy.
Well, I can tell you, and even from the time that we had a brief meeting before this with Dr. Raquel, the oral history, right? That's important because it's unfortunately it's not taught in schools, but it's our own personal stories that we can share because it's a legacy that our grandparents had, right? So just thankful that we can do that today and be encouraged and be moved to tell those stories.
I want to say something about the legacy because Cecilia Garland, Baton Legacy, has now included in a curriculum for 11th grade the role of the Filipino veterans. And so when you mentioned, I'm so happy, Chaz, that you mentioned it is not taught in school. Absolutely. There is so much missing in history classes, and we have to make this real. And the best way to bring this to life is having the story told through the oral history, because this is the only way. And now we are integrating it into the curriculum of 11th grade. This is what Cecilia Garland did for Baton Legacy. I am waving to Jackie. Thank you, Jackie.
I wanted to just add something.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I raised my hand.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to thank Tita Rocky for doing this presentation. And I just wanted to add that the book, Never Surrender, is not only never surrender, Tito Ed never forgot also. He never forgot the people that worked around him and also fought beside him. I remember always how incredible his memory was when I met with him, how he talked about what my father did, how he sacrificed, how he fought hard. And it's just incredible because he's had so many people around him fighting, but he remembers the details of the men that fought side by side with him. And I really appreciated that. And I think that also inspired me. Like you, Tita Rocky, you said, I guess it's fate.
Mhm.
My brother and my sister had this project, and I'm just here in the States, in the US, to just support them when they need me. And unfortunately, both of them passed away and leaving me the project, which I was totally like caught off guard. But I said, I guess it's meant to be, like you said,
Absolutely.
carry on the legacy. And like the other previous speaker mentioned, a lot of the younger generation, and which I'm really proud of this young, because I know I'm older than some of these people on this Zoom meeting, that they are so involved, and I'm proud that they're doing this, because like us in the museum, we decided to invite the teachers, because a lot of the younger generations, they're not taught some of these things of the
Exactly.
past. And
Absolutely.
so we're invited teachers and students to visit the museum to learn about the past, and in fact also not only the World War II, but martial law and what it is to meaning to have democracy and freedom. And with that, I'm also, glad to have this network. Like now, I'm also searching for some of the veterans who are and family members to include them in this celebration to honor our veterans. This is not only for my dad, but it's for all the veterans to be able to thank them. And I'm
Wonderful.
so grateful to Tito Ed, and that's why I don't even want to be in Zoom, because I'm full of tears.
Thank you, Jackie. That is so wonderful. What a beautiful
Guys.
message. Mhm.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. And also from Jeff Breyer in the chat, with every conversation that I'm able to listen to that involves the Filipino cultural history, it's just unmatched in the world. Such a beautiful foundation to life. Thank you for being such wonderful examples. And Jean Schnabel, thank you for sharing this story. I had not heard about Colonel Ramsey, but now that I have, I'm excited to watch the documentary and learn more. So again, there's the book. There's been 339,000 copies of this book that's out in the world. It's available to read. The Never Surrender movie is also available to watch. Atimel shared, feel free to share your family stories with us at facesmidwest at att.com. And this is the Benevity link that Mel talked about around the Filipino American History Month giving opportunity to honor the Philippine Scouts Heritage Society that Rocky mentioned. And with that, we're at the top of the hour. Ending on time is, I think, a sign of respect. And I'm a 1 minute over. So I just wanted to say thank you. Salamat to everyone who attended. Salamat to everyone who stayed. And big, big thank you to Rocky for sharing her time and her story and offering us a very memorable Filipino History Month moment for us today. So thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
Elaine. Thank you, Elaine. You're a super moderator. I am so proud of you. And I'm so